Joined now one last time by senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, whose weekly appearance on One Bills Live is presented by Pepsi. Pepsi is the official soft drink of the Buffalo Bills. Food deserves Pepsi. And Greg will take one last look back at the divisional playoff first and foremost, and a game that turned somewhat into a seesaw affair, but largely the 5 turnovers are what did Buffalo in, as you well know. And even though they had 5 turnovers, Buffalo's defense only gave up 16 points on those 5 turnovers. One, they didn't even have a chance to defend because it was at the end of the half and they just came on and kicked a field goal. But I know the defense is going to continue to get flack for giving up 33 points to an offense that really wasn't a juggernaut from a point-scoring perspective. But 5 turnovers kind of stacks the deck against you, does it not?
Yeah, although they still put up 30 points. I would imagine, guys, if we had said last Friday before this game that the Bills were going to put up 30 points, I think we would probably felt pretty confident that they were going to win the game.
Yeah, especially against a defense of that caliber.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a very odd game to talk about because it's easy just to say 5 turnovers and that's the reason. And obviously, you don't want to turn the ball over 5 times. And I've always believed you have to look at each turnover as a separate play. But, they still put up 30. They still didn't they have over 400 yards of total offense?
Oh, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I mean, they pretty much went up and down the field. So it was a very odd game in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills had put up 450 yards of offense, and the Broncos were 350. Statistically, the Bills hung it up on them. But
Broncos had 2 more possessions, though.
Yeah, and that's really the basis of everything. What did you feel? I mean, the Bills actually, and I was a little surprised by this, the Bills actually ran the ball pretty well against the Broncos, and I was a little surprised by that. What about you?
Yeah, and they came out and they ran it really well to start the game. I think that I was surprised too. I was surprised that they were able to do that against that defense. That defense has been very, very good for much of the season. It was probably one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the league overall. We know they led the league in sacks for the 2nd consecutive year. They're pretty good on the back end. The corner position's really strong. Overall, I don't want to sit here and say I was surprised because we know Josh Allen is a really good player, but I wouldn't have expected them to go in and put up 30 points. And as Brownie said, with less possessions than you'd like to have in an ideal world. So, it didn't. I never felt, and I don't know, Brownie, you did the game obviously, so you're doing it kind of live and getting a feel for it. I never really felt that the Broncos stopped them in a strict sense,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And look, turnovers are a number on a page, and obviously, people can just point to that, and in a lot of people's minds that ends the conversation. But obviously, the one at the end of the half was just stupid. There's no other way to get around that one. But the others were, you almost have to, kind of break those down. And there's some detail and nuance involved to all the others that just go beyond, Josh Allen turned it over 5 times, well, actually 4 times because Cook had the fumble. There's always nuance to turnovers, and you definitely have to break those down in detail.
Right. Curious for your thoughts on this because the throw to Samuel on the deep post, he tries to put it on Samuel. Clearly, he never sees the safety lock who comes in late and swoops in for the interception. Do you think, and again, we're trying to assess this in real time because the pocket's collapsing when he does let it go, do you think he could have led him to the back left corner of the end zone, put some air on that, and let him run under it rather than try to put it on him on that post route?
I do. Here's what I typed, Brownie, because I take really copious notes. I said Samuel from number 3 to trips needed to bend his vertical route away from lock rather than stay straight. Allen pumped the boundary ex-Kincaid to hold down the boundary safety Hufanga so that Samuel could get over the top of Hufanga. Well-designed concept, but Samuel stayed too vertical and Allen left the ball too far inside. That was my take watching the play.
So you felt the same way I did.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
a perfect throw would have been a completion instead of an interception. No question.
But he could lead him to the corner there,
Yeah.
where there was space.
And I think, to me, it was a combination of the fact that I think Samuel should have bent it further, and Josh should have taken him further. So
Yeah.
then Locke
That
would
ball
not have
should-
been a
yeah.
factor. Now, I'm not saying it would have been a touchdown. Maybe it would have just been an incompletion. But Locke would not have been a factor if that had happened.
Yeah. To me, that ball
Because
should have
why-
landed.
you're-
That
you're
ball should have
pumping-
landed in the end zone rather than on the 5-yard line.
Correct.
Yeah.
It should have landed. Now that we're looking at the play, it probably should have landed on the R of Broncos, or even the end of the B of Broncos.
Right.
And then, like I said, maybe it's not complete, but it's certainly not intercepted. And then Locke's not even a factor on the play.
Right.
Right. Yeah, this is it. It's an interesting game to look at. If you just look at the numbers, we've been here obviously far too many times. The Bills scored 30 points and didn't punt the entire game.
I know.
So you never really feel like they got stopped. What did Denver's offense do, if anything, that was maybe unexpected or better than usual?
Well, I think the pass game was probably a little better than Bo Nix obviously, had a many fourth quarter comebacks this year, and that's what people point to. But overall for the season, and I like Bo Nix, I think he'll end up being a very good player, but he was very uneven this year, and they really had not scored a lot of points in a lot of games. Yeah, they had comebacks, and there were some games where he made special plays. Look, there's multiple ways to look at this, Steve. You know that. I mean, look at last week when they beat Jacksonville. They score with 2 minutes to go, give or take, and then the defense makes a play. This week they score to go ahead with 4 minutes to go, and the defense gives it up. What would the conversation be if the defense held them in those final 4 minutes and they would have won the game, 30-27? What would have been the score? 30-26, 30-27, I guess.
Right.
They did. The defense did
whole
get the stop, though, in overtime, Greg, and the offense didn't finish.
That's true. Oh, no question. Oh, no. Once the game continues, obviously you've got to play what the game demands.
Right.
But there's the one thing that always, because I sit and watch every play of these games, of not just the Bills, but of all these games, and see, the tactics of every single play and what happens. It's always easy when you have the outcome of a game to point to 1 or 2 or 3 plays. To me, that's always easy. But I'm looking at the way an entire game plays out, the process of a game. And there's no question. Look, obviously Josh Allen would love to have the throw to Knox back. No question. We know that. And it's easy to say, well, as has been said all week, as you guys know, because none of us live under a rock, well, he just can't make the big plays in the big games, that kind of stuff. That's always easy to say after the fact.
Yeah.
And there's no question, Josh would tell you that he needed to make that throw. That's, Steve, that. Players know when something should have happened that didn't. They know that. But, there's a whole process to the game. And it's not just one play or 2 plays.
Yeah. And at the same time, he had an unbelievable throw to Dalton Kincaid to go up 24-23 and wipe out a 13-point halftime deficit. I mean, that is a super tight window throw for the touchdown to go up. I mean, that's an all-world throw there, is it not?
No, of course. I mean, you go through a whole game, there's great play. That was great throw, and they went up at that point. And I'm sure a lot of people, when they went down 23-10, and of course, being down at half 20-10 was due to Josh, with that stupid play at the end of the half. But then when they came back and went ahead 24-23, I'm sure a lot of people were surprised. Oh my God, this is a great defense. The Broncos are at home, and now all of a sudden the Bills are ahead. I mean, that's why you can't just look at 1 or 2 plays, because you leave out so much about the way a game is played.
Yeah, and as you wind down this game, and coming out of this game, Bo Nix, we find out, snapped his ankle on the next to the last play on what appeared to be just an innocuous kind of end around to kill the clock, kind of on a nothing play.
Right. And you talk about one play, Brownie, or two plays. I mean, obviously, so many people, and you've probably discussed it all week. I'm late to the party because it's Friday and we're moving on. And obviously, a lot of things have happened since then in the organization. But a lot of people point to that third and long play that Bo Nix hit to. I forget who caught it, but you know the play I'm talking about that led to the Mims touchdown. You know, yeah, a lot of people point to that play and say, well, what's going on with the defense? I mean, look, the one thing you can say, if you're looking at more of an overview, is one thing they did not have, and it almost goes back to Bill Walsh, is one of the key things in the NFL is to be able to rush the quarterback in the fourth quarter. And that was one thing they were not able to do in this particular game, and it hurt them.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's something they haven't been able to do all season, which kind of
Correct.
allows us to transition to, off-season roster upgrading.
Yeah.
And I think it would be hard-pressed to see any other way than to edge rusher, because the Bills
Yep.
have had one edge rusher in the last 9 years put up a double-digit sack season. That was Leonard Floyd in 2023 when he had 10.5 sacks. That's the list. They need, and Steve and I were talking about this earlier, it would seem evident to everybody, they need a game wrecker at that position, but knowing their cap situation is going to present some constraints, they're probably going to have to find that in the draft somehow, some way. They got to get a game wrecker, and they may have to sacrifice draft capital to get to a place on the board to get that.
Yeah, or I don't know. I'm not a cap guy, so I don't know how all that works. I mean, maybe they then have to release some guys they don't want to release. I mean, This is what happens in off seasons. But I would say that need and the wide receiver position are two things that need to be addressed. And I don't think that we're speaking out of school by saying that. I think it's pretty evident just by watching the games. As you said, Brownie, they really were not able to rush the quarterback all year long. And clearly they need wide receivers. I mean, it's just where it is right now. Every team has needs going into an offseason. These are two significant areas that the Bills need to upgrade.
Let me present some other scenario to you, because we've talked about this as a possible shift next season. And obviously now with a new head coach potentially coming in, a lot of other things could shift too, in terms of scheme and whatnot. But Shaq Thompson, as we've discussed with you several times, improved their run front from the middle linebacker position. I would be all for Shaq Thompson coming back, but he's an 11-year veteran. I think we'd like to see him as a depth piece at middle linebacker. It's considered to be a good linebacker draft. What are your thoughts on dropping a new middle linebacker in the middle of that defense and maybe shifting Terrell Bernard to the weak side?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously you can talk about that, but then you got to find the guy. I mean, and Shaq Thompson clearly played well. I mean, you know, that's the thing. I mean, you just mentioned the draft. I don't know. I'm not even in free agency mode at this point. I'm still in the season. Obviously, you guys are done. I'm still in the season. So my mind is not on who's available in free agency at this moment in time. But although I have started taking a peek a little bit at some college guys just because I have less tape to watch, and I get toward the end of the week and I can mess around a little with college guys now. But the point is, then you got to find the guy. That's the thing. I mean, Shaq Thompson, say what you want. I know he missed a few games, but I thought he played extremely well. Now, overall, because you don't know who the head coach is going to be, you don't know who the D coordinator is going to be, you don't know what the defense is going to look like. We spoke about how effective at times that 3-3-5 was. You may never see it again. You don't know who's going to be the head coach and who the DC is going to be. So it's hard to know the answers to those questions right now. There's a lot in flux. We'll see how quickly they name a head coach. I guess they're doing interviews, and I don't know what their timetable is. The problem is you start to run out not only of head coach candidates, but of assistant coach candidates.
Right.
And those are just, in some ways, they're just as important.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, because there's a lot of buzz going around, a couple of guys on the Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams. They're the Nathan Shieldhouse for the Rams, Clint Kubiak for the Seahawks. Both of those guys, Clint Kubiak in particular, has done wonders again with Sam Darnold, who proved he could do it last year in Minnesota, and now has gone even further with Darnold in the playoffs in Seattle. Any light you can shed on what you see in these two offenses, the Seahawks and the Rams, that would transfer over for one of these candidates to bring to Buffalo to help out, that kind of thing? What do you see in these two candidates, and maybe what you can discern?
The only thing you can talk about is what they do tactically, because again, we're not speaking, and I don't know them as people, so obviously a head coach has to have some kind of presence as well, in addition just to putting together, a cool scheme. And I think obviously we would both agree that that the Seahawk offense, because Kubiak sort of comes from that Shanahan-McVay school, and obviously Shellhouse also comes from the McVay school, and we know both those offenses are very good. They're very under center centric. They're very play action centric. They're very boot action centric. There's a lot of reduced splits. There's a lot of pre-snap movement. I think all these things are very good in today's NFL. So if you're just looking at it tactically, I think they help, and I think they help any quarterback. But again, now you get into, are they quote unquote leaders of men, which often seems to be lost in a lot of these conversations as to, head coaches, because everybody just talks about, whether, he's a great defensive coach or he's a great offensive coach. He's great schematically. He's great, but you also have to lead a team, and that's what we don't know. But I think if you're talking about those two offenses tactically and schematically, Steve, I think they're, in today's NFL, I think they're very, very good.
Yeah, and obviously Mike McDaniel is a guy who's interviewing today that comes from that same school of thought. I've
been around him. I've been around Mike McDaniel. I've talked to him. I had an opportunity to do that a few years ago. There was even some stuff that they put up on social media that showed me, he's talking to me, and he's an incredibly intelligent guy. Now, again, I can't speak to whether he's a good head coach or not. That's you're not there. He's got a different personality because he's very academic in the way he goes about things, but he's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
Right.
Greg, thanks for the time as always. This will be it for now, but I'm sure we can reconvene and find you in Indianapolis in about a month.
I will be there. If you guys are there, we will chat for sure, guys.
I
love being with you guys, and we'll do it again starting in Indy.
All right, that sounds
man.
good. We'll catch up with you then. That's Greg Cosell joining us,
right.
senior producer from NFL Films.